Hi everybody, my name is Arsyasi Kusumaninghati from the English Education Study Program. I am from Pancasakti University, Bekasi. I will deliver a material entitled The Frontier Heritage. Good morning everybody,
Morning, Miss.
how are you?
I good.
Anybody know what we are going to learn today?
No,
Do you know about frontier heritage?
no.
Today's topic is the frontier heritage. Listen carefully.
Yes.
The impact of the American frontier. Despite the fact the frontier happened about a century ago, it is still an obvious evidence in the US until today. Frontier had become important aspect in shaping American values. Frontier experience had been depicted in form of movies and TV shows featuring a cowboy fighting India. Until this very day, most Americans become aware of the darker side of the settlement, later known as the time when American Indians were mistreated. Equality of opportunity. The frontier acted as an expression of equality of opportunity in its purest form. There were a tendency where people were trusting each other on the equal level. Frontier were mostly known on their saying, "What's above the ground is more important than what's beneath the ground." It offered a new beginning for those who failed either in business, politics, or even love to advance themselves to the west for success and a better life. There was always a need for works on the frontier. Most Americans are still inspired by the frontier as the value in its original and purest form. Example of its value: hard-working attitude, competitive rage for success, and gold rush. And daily life on the frontier was usually less dramatic, although many stories of frontier adventure depicted life in the hard way. Frontier experience began around 1690 until 1890 when the settlement happened. Most frontier usually found in the western part of the country, where both land and life were full of and rather primitive. Successfully settling on frontier after another, they had moved across the continent for 2,700 miles, which made them think that it was their destiny to control the land. Later on, Native Americans were given some part of the land reservations, though government later broke their promise, which created a misery for most Indians. Type of heroic rugged individualist. A man against the wilderness, a man who was capable of mastering the harsh challenge of the wilderness, and mainly admired as a survivor and conqueror instead of a fighter. Lalu Man Against Man lasted from 1860 until the 1890 fought for control of the remaining lands, and commonly known as the Wild West, and primarily known as a fighter and a typical defender of good against evil. Okay, any questions?
I miss.
Okay.
Why is the frontier heritage related to the America values?
Yes. So it is the frontier heritage in individualism, self-reliance, and equality of opportunity have perhaps been the values most closely associated with the frontier heritage of America. This is probable because there was less control over the individual on the frontier than anywhere else in the United States. Do you want to ask again?
Me.
Yes, please.
How the frontier shape the America character?
Yeah, it is. According to Turner, it was the frontier that shaped American institutions, society, and culture. The experience of the frontier, the westward march of pioneers from the Atlantic to the Pacific coast, distinguished Americans from Europa and gave the American nation its expansional characters. Frontier Heritage Summary. The course is aimed at helping us discover both the common thread and the differentiating patterns that characterize frontier experience of Europa and Native Americans in Canada and the United States. The course also attempts to explore the experience of men and women in this group and of other minority groups where relevant. If we are to treasure the diversity of our culture, we need to understand the archetypes and stereotypes which blur and obscure the ways in which indigenous and Europa culture change and continue to change each other. Such patterns have been the focus of scholarly work since 1893 when Frederick Jackson Turner announced the closing of the American frontier and speculated about the significance of the frontier in American history. A similar set of speculation about Canadian character is the work of Margaret Atwood. Last of the Mohicans Hawkeye and Corollas of the Mohicans is one of two films we use to open our discussion of the frontier experience. James Fenimore Cooper's novel of the same name has inspired a number of film versions. It is a tale we keep telling ourselves with slightly different emphasis. What makes it interesting for our purpose is precisely its status as one of the continuing mighties of American culture. The most recent version of this movie differs significantly from Cooper's novel and earlier films. You might want to compare Cooper's version of a meeting between Magua, the Huron ally of the French, and the French commandant Montcalm. With the same scan of you can also explore the Mohican perspective on the history of their people. You can also explore the Mohican perspective on the history of their people. Prepare for our discussion by printing the last of the Mohicans discussion guide and bringing it to class. Black Robe. This film provides a sharp contrast the last of the Mohicans in every way. It is based on research and a novel of the same title, written by Brian Moore, who also wrote the screenplay. It explored the relationship between the First Nation and the Jesuit missionaries who sought to convert them to Christianity. Roger Elbert's review of the film explored the background and explained the reception the film received from critics and audience, including Elbert. If Last of the Mohicans is a story we keep telling ourselves, Black Robe may be a story we don't want to hear. What interests you is why. Prepare for our discussion by printing the Black Robe discussion guide and bringing it to class. Spirit of the Border. Zane Grey says in his introduction that he wrote Spirit of the Border to set the record straight on a great Indian fighter, Law Wetzel, and the honor his ancestors. The problem with the stories we tell ourselves is that we believe them, especially if the fiction we are reading is historical. Alan, we exert account of the event clarifies who was responsible for the deaths of the Christian Indian. Apparently, Ebenezer Zen journal of his descendant retelling of its contents was the story they wanted to tell themselves or use, rather than the story of a savage attack by revolutionary colonists on Native America, who had accepted their religion and who, in the name of non-violence, refused to ally themselves with either the Yankees or the soldier of the crown. Prepare for our discussion by printing the Spirit of the Border discussion guide and bringing it to class. The Métis in the Canadian film Equa and Mistress Madeleine we meet a people who came to view themselves as a new people. The Métis of Canada and the United States, a people born of the meeting between people of the First Nation and Europa, living in the Great Lakes region. You understand?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, Al, class, we will stop here. We'll continue this next week. Thank you.